Coming up next on The Voice of Alabama Politics, voter fraud? Also, are Democrats voting in Republican primaries? And Lindy Blanchard sues the state over voting machines.
You're moving into a land of both shadow and substance, of things and ideas. You've just crossed over into the Twilight Zone.
No, not the Twilight Zone, just sheer madness. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V. Welcome to The Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and today I'm joined by Susan Britt, research guru extraordinaire, and Josh Moon, columnist and investigative reporter at APR and a happy pool owner.
Absolutely. Happy pool owner, yeah. It does make life a little better.
I guess. I don't know why that came to mind. I guess because we're coming to visit you and Stephanie and Andy Lou and see the new pool.
Yeah, man, we'll have a good time. We will.
Hey, I tell you, somebody who's gone off the deep, right? Segue here. Lindy Blanchard and Tommy Haynes are suing the state of Alabama, saying that they want paper ballots, that they want them hand counted, and that our machines are somehow linked to the internet, and that this is, let me quote, has caused concrete injuries to both of them. Josh, what do you think about that?
Yeah, that's dumb. It's easily disprovable. The Republican Secretary of State can disprove that in a matter of seconds. We've gotten to the point now where we're essentially a bunch of bad little league parents on the right. That they're whining about everything that's going on because they're not winning. When they're winning, everything's fine. You notice they're not challenging the votes in any of these other races where they won. They're not saying there's any fraud taking place in any of those other places. So, it's such sour grapes and such, honestly, it's lunacy. It really is lunacy at this point. We've investigated these things. We've showed you that they're not connected to the internet. Stop it.
I mean, Susan, to claim that somehow there's a problem because these machines, and you've looked at these machines, you've looked at the data from these machines. I mean, it just seems like it just never ends. I mean, it seems ridiculous.
I mean, you really think there couldn't be voter fraud in paper ballots? I mean, 1, 2, 3. Come on, people. You count them out and you be throwing them in the floor. Who knows what's going on? With that. And let's not forget the expense of having people hand count the ballots. What that's going to do to this, broke state as it is.
I mean, if you want Jethro Bodine counting the ballots, 1, 2, let me get my shoes off, rather than a computer program that does one thing, counts ballots.
Right.
It's ludicrous.
It is ludicrous. And what gets me more than anything is that there's this notion among people where we separate out and pretend as though the folks that are doing the counting are people who we don't know. They're not. Go up to the election center and go up to your probate office. Go up and talk to the people who are running the elections in your county and in your districts. Go up there and talk to them and see who they are. They're the people in your neighborhoods. You know these people. And to this idea that there's this massive fraud that includes them is just so insane. Stop it.
I mean, Susan, you and I have been voting at the Etowah, the
Ivy Fire
Department, which is firehouse, which is about the size of our living room. And we've known those people all our lives.
Those people have known me since before I was born. When my mother was pregnant with me, my God.
And they are still there counting their ballots, and they'll look at us every time and go, license,
I know, it's
identification.
ridiculous.
It's like, you've known me all my life.
But they're doing their absolute
doing their
duty
job.
the way it's supposed to be done.
Yeah,
What
yeah.
makes you think they're going to count the ballots any differently?
They're just not. It's
No,
just not
that's
happening that way.
ridiculous.
But you get people in their hand counting. It's back to what Comrade Lenin said. I don't care who cast the votes. I want to know who counted them.
Oh, oops, are we
So
supposed to
that's
count that box over there?
Yeah,
Oh,
forget
I'm
that
sorry.
box. But again,
I had put my ballot in the machine, so I know my ballot gets counted.
yeah. Well, and they are not. This is a fact. They are not electronically hooked to the internet
No,
in
they
any
are
way
not.
whatsoever. This is Mike Lindell, the crazy pillow guy, or the pillow guy who's crazy. I'm not sure which it is. But one of the things that you hit on, Josh, just a minute ago, is this idea of voter fraud. And voter fraud is only voter fraud, according to Mo Brooks, if the Democrats do voter fraud. But if the Republicans win, there's no fraud. But if the Republican loses, the Democrats are responsible for the fraud. You and I looked at an article on this where in the New York Times, Mo kind of let the truth slip.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. He says this nonsense, this kind of, I don't even brain mush nonsense that he utters about how the illegals don't vote in these elections, but they do vote for, and it was just, what are you talking about? And again, I'm back to the best analogy I can make is that we've got a bunch of bad Little League parents that keep getting tossed out of games because they're arguing over just nonsense. And I don't understand how, first of all, I don't understand how this even becomes a thing that you can say with a straight face, and then that other people pick up on it and believe that it's true in some way simply because they want a certain side to win. It's nonsense.
Well, he says that it's, let me quote, in a Republican primary or Democratic primary, the motivation to steal elections is less because of the candidate's philosophy of government differences are minor. That doesn't even make any sense.
Well, and he said, that in Alabama, the theft happens in predominantly
Democratic
part of the state. You think he might be...
he meant racism. He's doing racism.
That's
okay,
exactly what that is
Exactly.
right there.
Yeah.
What are the predominantly Democratic parts of the state? Black.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure he's clinging to his Anglo-Saxon heritage there.
Oh, of course he is. Yeah.
Yes.
It's what's weird to me is that when we actually investigated all of these races that they claim were fraudulent, the only fraud that was found in all these states out there seemed to be Donald Trump white people voters. Weird how that worked out.
Who would thunk?
Well, it's just this thing with Lindy Blanchard and Mo Brooks is just more of the insanity. I thought Lindy Blanchard had more class and character than this, and I hope she just drops this and lets it roll. Anyway, you're watching the voice of Alabama politics. We'll be right back.
This summer, the world's roads lead here to Birmingham. The World Games, recognized by the International Olympic Committee, will bring athletes from more than 100 countries here to compete for gold. Tickets are on sale now to see events like flag football, softball, gymnastics, lacrosse, sumo wrestling, martial arts, sport climbing, and more. The World Games will bring the best in international sports here. So join the celebration, Alabama, as we step up, because this is our medal moment.
So you got caught speeding. But this time you got more than a ticket.
What are you in for?
Vehicular homicide.
Stop speeding before speeding stops you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
Welcome back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. You know, there's been some folks on Twitter saying they had a debate lined up between Katie Britt and Mo Brooks, and that never happened. There was never any debate assured. There have been three entities, a couple of cable folks, and the ALGOP, the Alabama GOP, all wanted to do debates. They offered negotiations with Katie Britt and Mo Brooks, and they never could reach an agreement on these debates, Susan. But Mo Brooks is acting, I mean, he is truly, I feel like he has stepped over the abyss. I mean, some of the statements he's making are just outrageous.
Oh, you're trying to say that Katie has backed out of all of these debates.
Right.
She has not backed out of these debates, nor has Mo Brooks. It just simply comes to, they couldn't come to an agreement on the terms of the debate. That is entirely different.
Yeah, I mean, Josh, when you have candidates like this, Mo Brooks has said he wants to talk about ads, and he throws out that somehow Katie Britt's aligned with Lisa Murkowski out of Alaska or Liz Cheney. I mean, there is just no proof in any of his. And these are just, you know what? You ever seen a cart flailing on a bank? That's kind of what that's like.
I have, yes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, it's it's disappointing from both. For both of them, honestly, for people who are voters, because let's be honest about this. One of these two people is probably going to be the person that represents this state in the United States Senate. I understand. I know that there's a Democratic challenger and a pretty decent and a good guy in Will Boyd. But, we look at recent history and we see how Doug Jones did in the state, and we see, just the writing on the wall here. One of these people are going to be up there in the Senate, most likely. And it's a shame that we don't get to hear their position on very important topics for the state. I would assume at such a debate, somebody would stand there and force them to talk about actual issues that matter to the people of Alabama. And it's a real shame that somehow or another we couldn't figure this out between the two parties. And what's an even bigger shame is that the folks are still going to go and vote for these people, and there's going to be no punishment whatsoever for any of them for failing to do so.
well, I mean, and again, debates what we call debates today really aren't what anybody in the reasonable world of debating would call debates.
Right.
But to at least get up there and address the issues side by side, Susan, I think that's right.
I've always...
How are you going to debate with somebody who lies?
Well, you can't. The only thing you can do is get up and state your policies and basically ignore them.
Yeah.
But
You just have to do it like Joe Biden did,
the debates anymore is, you're asking questions. They're not actually talking to each other as much as they used to. But I don't know how she, other than just telling the truth and stating her policies and letting him represent himself as the moron he is.
I mean, what?
Oops.
Yeah.
Got him out. I'm sorry.
No, but I agree. These statements that he's making now seem like they're so far outside of even the realm of politics. They've moved into the sort of, and I think it's because he's losing, and he's losing big time. I just don't think he catches Katie Britt. No matter how much he lies, and so what it's going to come down to, Josh, I think, is likability is a big thing, and who you trust to go to Washington. Another thing is going to be, we had 23% turnout in the primary. Yeah. I mean, if we get 19, it's going to be surprising. Who can get out their vote is one of the real key issues here.
Yeah, I think, and I always have maintained that I thought that Katie Britt, who's been the leader of this thing for a while now, would have been better served to have Mike Durant as her runoff opponent, simply because I felt like his support would have been much softer. It would have been a lot easier to turn off a lot of those people. If you've hung with Mo Brooks through a decade plus of crazy, then you're hanging with Mo Brooks. You know what I mean? And so those people are going to probably show up, kind of like the Roy Moore base. So you're going to get a base of voters, and in a low turnout race like this is probably going to be, I mean, it's going to be, shamefully low.
Yeah.
You know, you're putting yourself at some risk when you're facing somebody who can pretty effectively turn out a base group of voters.
You know, but Susan, we always claimed that Brooks had a 35% ceiling. I think we were wrong. I think he's got a much lower ceiling.
I think it's possible. You know, we equate his ceiling to the Roy Moore ceiling, which is about 35%. But like Josh says, those 35% people show up.
Right.
You know, even if it is a 30%, you know, approval rating for him right now, it doesn't matter. Those people do show up. Katie's going to have to really work hard to get her voters to the polls.
And you talked about Will Boyd. Will Boyd's a good guy, but unfortunately in Alabama, there's no competition. Once this is over, it's over. But, you know, when you look at the map, Katie Britt won. She beat Mo Brooks in every county except for, what, 5?
I believe
and
it
she was
5.
in distance, or striking distance in those. And that's with Durant in the race. You know, Mike Durant said he was going to come out and support Mo Brooks because he was hurt that he got beat by a girl. And we know how he has this thing for women.
Yeah.
And so, Josh, I haven't heard a peep out of Mike Durant.
No, and I don't know if he was serious about that or if at this point he just wants to bail out of politics completely and take the loss. But you know, I'll say this, you know, like what was really kind of surprising to me, and I know she's from the area, but how well Katie did in the Wiregrass, I mean that down there is typically Mo Brooks, you know, kind of feeding ground, where he goes and does pretty well with a real conservative base down there. And the fact that she beat him so soundly in those counties down there, that's got to be really worrisome for them.
Well, and I think Susan, she does well in the rural districts because she went out there and talking.
Exactly.
She's got the farmers, you know, endorsement.
And I think timber as
that's
well.
big right there.
It is, but Katie got out and did the work. She went to all these counties. She went to all these farmers. She went to all these, you know, farmers markets and events and stuff, and people got to know her. And I think that really is what pulled her ahead in that Wiregrass area.
Yeah, she's been in more barbecue joints than James Spann, and that's saying
That's
something.
a lot.
We're going to have to leave it right there. You're watching the voice of Alabama politics.
You'll never guess what 400,000 people in the U.S. were using when they crashed their cars last year. No, not this. This. Distracted driving will kill you. Drive safe, Alabama. A message from your Alabama Department of Transportation.
There was an old woman who lived in a shoe. She had so many children, she didn't know what to do. She gave them some broth without any bread and kissed them all soundly and put them to bed. Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome back to the voice of Alabama politics. Susan, we often hear that people say, well, my vote just doesn't matter, and they stay home. Former Senator Tom Whatley, running out of the Auburn area, lost his Senate seat by one vote. It matters.
One vote. It matters. It absolutely matters. I mean, he was running against Jay Hovey. It came down, at one point, it was a difference of four votes. But then when they recounted it again, it came down to one vote. So, yes, your vote does count.
I mean, you know, Wiley served, almost 12 years now. He was elected in 2010, Josh. And by all accounts, likable guy. But Jay Hovey, who's on the city council down there, he really took the vote inside of the area where Auburn is. Whatley did well in the rural area, but one vote, man. I mean,
that's
gotta hurt.
You're right. It's crazy. I mean, I think there were 16,000 or so votes in that district, and so I mean, it's for it to come down to one vote is a wild story. But you're right about Hovey. He took the vote in Auburn, the city of Auburn, and that kind of overcame Whatley's big advantage in the rural areas around there. And I would say that a lot of that this is the dangers. If you're Republicans, this is the dangers of gerrymandering to a degree in which you kind of squeeze out all other competition. Because if you're in a district like Whatley's and you don't have anybody in the Democratic primary, you don't have a bunch of challengers over there running for something and you've got to go vote for, well, you just vote in that Republican primary for the person who you find the lesser of two evils, I guess, if you're a Democrat. And Hovey was certainly that guy. He seemed, he wasn't crazy. He didn't run any crazy ads. He didn't say anything dumb. He just has been a solid city councilman. And so I think a lot of Democrats in that district went out and voted for the guy.
Well, and we're going to talk about that later in the show, but a vote's a vote in Alabama. There's no party registration. But again, these are some interesting things here. Now, I want to get to this next one. House District 28 and 29.
What a mess.
They totally messed up the ballots because when they redistricted those districts, they changed who voted where. Again, back to Josh's thing, they were trying to do some more gerrymandering. Well, what it ended up doing is you ended up with ballots that did not reflect the district. And Jamie Grant, Representative Gil Isbell, who they're wanting to challenge this. Mac Butler, who was former rep, is now won that seat or won that primary. This thing has been certified, Susan. It's been certified, and yet they voted with the wrong ballots.
They did. They voted with, one candidate was on a ballot in the district he wasn't even in, which meant that he wasn't on the ballot for his district. And I mean, it's just an all-out mess. And so this is up in Etowah County, where we're from.
No.
And it just baffles me that they're not going to try to, fix this.
Well, and the Secretary of State, John Merrill, said they weren't the wrong ballots. I mean, they gave out the... Anyway, everybody has cast blame everywhere that it could be. And John Merrill said there is no state law that makes it so that they have to redo this thing. And it's up to the Republican Party.
That's insanity. I mean, it's just, you know what? We spent taxpayer dollars on this.
Yeah.
To ensure that you have a proper candidate that you can vote for in your district to have the proper representation.
Yeah.
What? I mean,
this is in multiple races.
Yeah. I mean, that was a county commissioner. And this affected races.
Yes,
but
a bunch of them.
It looks like they're going to do absolutely nothing about it. It has been dumped in John Wall's lap over at Algot. It's like, oh, this is terrible. What are we going to do? I don't know.
But aren't these the same ones that keep screaming voter fraud? Wait a minute. Oops.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, well, we want accurate elections unless, it works out for us.
Yeah, well, I hadn't heard anybody on the winning side call it fraud. Anyway, I want to get to what Josh was talking about. I got a bunch of calls and texts, and oh my God, Democrats are voting in the Republican primary. Oh my God, Democrats are, and people just raising Cain about it. Well, guess what? We live in Alabama. We don't have party registration.
You know what? There's nothing illegal about that. I'm sorry. That is not crossover voting. No. That's not how crossover voting works. Yes, a Democrat, oh my God, can vote for a Republican, especially if they see that they're voting against somebody, which I understand was going on in the Whatley campaign. So it's not illegal. It's absolutely legal that a Republican would vote for a Democrat, although hell would freeze over.
No, crossover voting means you voted in, say, the Democratic primary, and then you tried to vote in the Republican runoff.
Right.
That would be more of a that.
Yeah,
but
that's
we don't have that. We don't have party registration, so it's totally legal because we don't have to say whether we're a Democrat or Republican.
However,
we just get a ballot.
However, I want to make a point with this. There was, on the absentee ballot this year, there was a thing down at the bottom, the last line, that wanted you to declare if you were a Republican or a Democrat. I've got a real problem with that. A real problem. And I told them at the voting, when we voted, I will not fill that out. It's on the outside envelope, my name, my address, and they wanted you to pledge to whatever party it was.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous. It should not be on the ballot.
It basically was like you got to pledge allegiance to that party. It really was that egregious.
It was. It was awful.
And I'm not going to do that for anybody.
No.
You know.
Yeah, I don't understand this this outrage over these things. These are people voting for their representative. You know, it doesn't. It should be open to anybody to vote for these people, no matter who you want to vote for. You know, no matter what party you more closely align with, you should be able to vote for people. If you're paying for the election, you ought to be able to vote in it. And taxpayers are paying for these elections. You go and vote.
And now that you bring it up, it reminds me that most of the people that were complaining about it were the ones that didn't win the races.
Yeah, it is. It always is, right? That's where the voter fraud is.
Yeah, of course.
But again, this is something Republicans did back when Democrats were in control.
Yeah.
They found a candidate that were more according to their liking.
That's
and
the
so
way you're supposed to vote.
you know, one-party system, you're going to have people voting in the other's primary because there's nobody else to vote for. That is not criminal or wrong or anything else. No
You're
matter
supposed to
what.
vote for the candidate, not the party.
Yeah. Well, we don't do that anymore. We have to
I do.
vote party line, and that's the only way to do it. All right, we're going to have to leave it right there. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You watch us because we watch them.